Good evening and welcome to the Alachua County School Board meeting for December 18th, 2018. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Before we have the approval of minutes, I do have a brief announcement that I read the last meeting. I want to read that again to the members of the public joining us this evening. Welcome, and we're glad you're here. If you wish to address the board, we ask that you fill out a public comment form, which we have available in the back of the room. I will call on individuals in the order that I receive the sheets. If we are not able to get to your comments in the initial 15-minute public comment period, you may address the board at the second public comment period at the end of the meeting. If you wish to address the board on an item on the agenda for the meeting, please also fill out the public comment form and come to the microphone when that item is reached on the agenda. Please remember that each individual has 3 minutes to address the board. Please focus on issue and input while avoiding personal attacks. Thank you. Now for the agenda, there is one very slight change in that the minutes for the December 4th meeting are not ready. I think they just got ready, and so board members have not had a chance to review them. So we'll put that off until January. So that would, do I hear a motion to approve the the agenda as presented with that one exception?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Paulson, and Ms. Certain, I'll make that a second if that's okay. Seconded by Ms. Certain. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, let me recognize Superintendent Clark for item D.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In talking with staff and with the volume of projects that will be coming up over the next several years, we thought it prudent to provide just a brief update on the second meeting of each month. So basically a once-a-month update. Some months would be obviously more extensive than others, depending on what projects we have in the hopper. So for this month, kind of where we are, just with a couple of things. On tonight's agenda, you will see the ranking and selection for the architects for the projects at Idlewild Elementary, Metcalf Elementary, and Howard Bishop Middle School. Projected cost for those 3 schools will be right in the neighborhood of about $35 million for those 3 schools. So that will be on the agenda tonight. And then also approving the architect for Elementary School I is also on tonight's agenda. And so for the timeline for those schools, Metcalf, Idlewild, and Elementary School I would come online in the fall of 2021, so at the start of that school year. And then Bishop would be completed in the first quarter of 2022, so right after what we believe to be the winter break in 2022. So that's kind of the timeline at this point for those particular projects. March, the priority schedule will be released once we finish up with DRMP. And then we will actually begin to start receiving some revenue late March, early April. So that's the first little brief update that you'll have on sales tax. Then we'll do this on the second meeting of each month going forward.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. I did want to also thank Assistant Superintendent White for his informative article in the Gainesville Sun, and I think that's very important for the public to know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and I appreciated that. So thank you, Mr. White. And before we go any further, I wanted to recognize a surprise guest tonight, our original student representative on the school board, Alexandra Brady-Monet, And she is, please stand and be recognized. And she has completed her first semester at USF as a mechanical engineering major, my old job. Just kidding. But we're so proud of you and know you're going to just continue to have great academic success, and thank you for visiting. So moving ahead to board member superintendent announcements. Do I have any? Don't see any lights yet. Oh, there we go. Ms. Certain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Well, this time is usually set aside for board members to review what they've done since the last meeting. I had one or two interesting visits, but I'll only elaborate on one with a pen to tell you all what I plan to do going forward. I visited Hawthorne for their FFA fundraiser, but the one that I'd like to highlight tonight is I swung by Williams last week for their 80th anniversary celebration. Williams is a school that I didn't realize had so much history associated with it as far as transitioning through things. I had no idea that at integration, Williams was closed from K through 6 down to, I think Ms. Rawls said it went to a 4 through 6 center, and then it was a K through 4 center, then a K through 5 center. So it seems like Williams went through a whole lot of transition, but it was really good to see the old staff members or former staff members that were there from who were students there, and then they taught there. And then the current principal, Ms. Stokes, told us that she was a student at Williams and now she is the principal there. So it was kind of good to see people go full circle there. There was a lot of love and admiration for the facility there. I just hated that a lot more of the former administrators did not attend the celebration and former students, because I think that would have made it grand. And during my time here, I want to just give you all a forewarning that in January, I'm going to start highlighting the Lincoln High School exhibit that is open at the Aquin Jones Center. Dr. Deidre Houchin did her PhD dissertation on that, and I am in the process of reading that, and I'm going to start sharing some tidbits from that. Lincoln High School is a beloved school in this community. I didn't attend. My mother attended, and my father attended Lincoln. It was closed. All of its memorabilia and artifacts were discarded. Makes me feel some kind of way. So I'm going to use my time in January, starting in January, to highlight some of the things of the history of that school, because I think we need to recreate what happened at Lincoln. They did very good things with very few resources. Thank you all, and I look forward to sharing that with you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Certain. Ms. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to everybody tonight. Just wanted to highlight a few things that I attended. I went to the inaugural Westwood Musical Theater production, which was extremely enthusiastic and lots of fun. The kids loved it, and the parents were very supportive, and it was good. Also, the Holiday Traditions Stop Children's Cancer concert, which is a yearly event at the Phillips Center, was fantastic. Again, I really recommend it. You know, the youth orchestra plays under the direction of Gary Langford, and also when the Buchholz Chorus and the East Side Chorus and the PK Chorus all performed, and when they all sang with the orchestra, it was sublime. It was the prettiest thing that you could ever.
Youth Chorus.
Pardon me?
And the Gainesville Youth Chorus.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Gainesville Youth Chorus was there too. And they were wonderful. I was really impressed with those little kids. But anyway, it was not to be missed, and I hope people will go and see what a great thing our kids are doing in the public schools, music programs. Also, several of us went to the holiday luncheon that the foundation held at the Institute of Culinary Arts at Eastside. And again, our students were, shining in their production of a fabulous gourmet luncheon. Always fun to go there. And thank you to the foundation for having us. there. And that's it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ms. Roy. Dr. McNeely?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone, and happy holiday. I should say holidays because we have several coming up, don't we? I wanted to mention, and I hope I didn't do it last time. I don't think so, but I'm gonna, even if I did, they need to be recognized again. Dr. DeVito and Sharon Kuczynski and the entire fine arts team at Rollins Elementary, they are just amazing. Not only with the students that they teach, but the things that they are doing with research. So I wanted to share with you that the two individuals that I just spoke about, as well as the entire fine arts team, they have been accepted to present at the International Symposium on Assessment in Music Education at the University of Florida. Well, you'll say, oh, that's right down the street. But people from all over the world come to this symposium. And so even though we are right in the back door, it is very impressive to have been selected to present at this symposium. Not only that, they are writing up for publication all of the culturally responsive teaching that they're doing in music education. And so I'm excited to see the final of that. And guess what? They have been accepted to present in the summer in Princeton, New Jersey. Now, I don't know how we're going to get them there, but inasmuch that they have been selected, I know Mr. Purvis, Mrs. Clark, Mr. White, and many others, Deputy Jones, will all be passing the hat. Oh, Mr. Rella, don't let me leave you out. So that we can get the teachers and any other participants to New Jersey. This puts us on the map. It certainly does in education, especially fine arts. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the team at Rollins, Dr. DeVito, as well as Mrs. Kuczynski. I probably kind of botched her name, but is that okay? Very good. And I'd like to go on to speak about a class that I attended last week at Eastside High School. They were our regular major students there, and it was led by Mrs. Josephine Brown and Dr. Antoinette Edwards in leadership. Now, you know, we know all about different aspects of leadership, but when you have your juniors and your seniors in class, and you're talking about interviewing, writing resumes, what company that you'd like to, it was just amazing. You know, normally, sometimes high school students take out their phones, doing all of that on it, and not paying any attention to the presenters. Not this class. In fact, I sat through 2 classes. Absolutely wonderful. They are the type of students that I would want them to be in charge of the company, a company, in charge of this school district. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they were looking for. They knew how to interview and present themselves, and they were dressed for success. I just wanted to say that publicly, that sometimes the media will not pick up the good things that's happening in our schools. That is one class that I would tell anyone they need to take advantage of. And so there are 6 more classes, and I'm going to go to each one if my schedule will permit. They'll be all about leadership, the diversity of what is expected when you finish high school, when you finish college. There were participants who were saying, we're not going to college. We are going to go through our career tech program instead, or we're going to Santa Fe, all well and good. As long as you get out, you're successful, and you do the right thing as citizens. So I wanted to say those two things about Rollins Elementary as well as Eastside High School students. Now, Mrs. Certain kind of brushed over the FFA, but I want you to know that we were raising funds that night for their program, and her cake, Certain's cake, truly brought in the money. A red velvet that I wanted so badly, it brought in, I think it was $140 some dollars, that $150 that they auctioned. Every cake that night was auctioned, and they raised quite a bit of money for their projects out at Hawthorne. But that red velvet, we are going to tell her in the office upstairs, one needs to come after the holiday. I was too ticked that I could not outbid the person. So I just wanted, we have some fun things going on too, and that was a big one. Heavy, the man who picked it up. So anyway, that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. McNeely.
Sure.
And I would just say we're so proud of our students and our
Yes.
teachers at Rollins, and thank you for accentuating that. Okay, let's see, Ms. Certain, did you have anything else? Because your light's on. Okay, that's okay. Dr. Boston? I just wanted to mention that I had a chance yesterday to speak to the legislative delegation, and this was their annual hearing, and this was at the Santa Fe Fine Arts Auditorium, and so I emphasized what our priorities are as a school district, but I wanted to say that in addition to me talking about schools, we also had the ACEA, we had the ACCEPTA, PTA, and if that weren't enough, we had Mayor Surency from Hawthorne also advocating for public schools. So I'd like to certainly thank those folks for all addressing the needs of our children in our community. Okay, next, I don't have any forms for citizen input for this section. I have one for the action item, so I don't see anyone at this time. So we'll move ahead. Superintendent Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recommend that the school board approve the consent agenda as described in items 1 through 14.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
And second.
Motion by Dr. McNeely, seconded by Ms. Roy. Any discussion?
We'll add that.
Yeah.
Not that I have any objections to anything, but I did reach out to Mr. White earlier this afternoon to ask for the criteria that was used to rank the companies that are on the
Right.
consent agenda. I wasn't so concerned about who you picked because I'm not familiar with any of the companies. I just wanted to know the criteria that was used to rank, because what was in our packet and what was posted online was just a numeric ranking. And I wanted to know the criteria that there were. So he sent that to me, and I was satisfied with that.
Yeah, I think we all got that, so thank you.
So I think that in the future, though, we should post that online, so if any of the citizens would like to see that, the criteria for by which staff are using to evaluate companies, I think that would be good, helpful information
I think it
to
would be.
post up as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sarden. Ms. Roy.
Thank you. I also called Mr. White and talked about, it was strange to me that the two elementary schools, Idlewild and Metcalf, chose the number 2 person that had the second highest number of points. And he explained it to me that the committee felt like that particular architect was the one that they thought would best fit the school. So it was odd, but perfectly acceptable. That's what they want to do because they're all good. So, thank you. That's all.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing
I
none.
guess, yeah, I was sitting here thinking about the selection, and inasmuch that we, or I, did not get an opportunity to travel with the group, would you give us a rendering of some kind, or when were you planning on doing that?
Mr. Chair, we do plan on having renderings for all the school as part of the scope for the architects. And as soon as we get to that point, we'll do that. Right now, we just have our banners up on the schools, but we do plan to have renderings at every school.
Thank you, Mr. White.
What is, I didn't understand.
Renderings.
No,
I'm sorry.
that's my word, ban, what's the ban? Oh, banners, thank you. Okay, banners.
His mic is not down, is it?
Okay, no.
That's
Ms.
fine.
Certain?
I did have one other question.
Certainly.
Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I did have one other question that I'd like to direct to Superintendent Clark. She mentioned that they would have a priority schedule out in the spring. And I'd like to see how the rankings of the schools and the priority lists will be determined. I think that was kind of mentioned in the last DAC meeting that was held before my swearing in, but a quorum wasn't there, so we really didn't talk about that. So if you could provide that to us in the future, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, we can have the facilities department do that. They are working with DRMP, working on that list, so they can provide you all that documentation once that process is finished.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All in favor of the consent agenda, items 1 through 14, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, action item, and let me go to Mr. Moore, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The half-cent school capital outlay surtax referendum approved by Alachua County voters this past November includes language requiring oversight by an independent citizens committee. The School Board of Alachua County needs to establish formally the School Capital Outlay Surtax Oversight Committee to review and report on the expenditure of the surtax revenues for as long as the surtax remains in effect. The language in front of you is modeled on the oversight committee we have with the 1 mil oversight committee with a sprinkling of the district advisory committee mixed in, so it should look familiar. The superintendent recommends that the school board approve the School Capital Outlay Surtax Committee responsibilities and guidelines as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. McNeely, seconded by Ms. Roy. I do have one member of the public that has asked to speak to this, and that is Sandy Parker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandy Parker, and so I'm speaking as a citizen here. I have one kid still in school and one graduated last year. My concern with this action item is that we're talking about $240 million that's going to be raised over the next 12 years, which I believe is the life of the sales tax, and there does not seem to be, at least my reading of this, so I'm coming at this as a citizen, and what I am seeing is that we have a method by which people are appointed, but there's really no guidelines to, or any, it doesn't seem like to me, the way I read it, that there is any sort of requirements or veto or anything like that to sort of ensure that the money is spent correctly. I also noted that it says in the language to review and report on. I guess I'm not understanding if that means that they are overseeing the expenditures themselves or just sort of making sure everything is being spent and that improvements are being made to the schools. The language in the proposal also says, I quote, "The proposed responsibilities and guidelines are nearly identical to those established for the 1 mil oversight committee." So we have to, as the public, I guess, kind of know what that oversight looks like to understand what the guidelines are here. So it's a very confusing, to me, this is an enormous amount of money, and it's an enormous task to oversee that these monies are spent equitably and correctly to upgrade the schools. So it just, to me, doesn't feel like a lot of attention or notice has been given to this, to the public, and that it doesn't seem to me very well thought through in terms of what is trying to be accomplished. For example, I'm not quite sure, I'm sure they did a great job during the campaign and everything, but I'm not quite sure what that qualifies the Chamber of Commerce to nominate somebody. I'm with Indivisible Gainesville. We knocked on hundreds, actually knocked on thousands of doors promoting this. We weren't invited to appoint anybody as, to this, so I'm not quite sure. It seems fairly arbitrary to me. I would recommend, I understand that business owners have expertise in their businesses, but I would strongly recommend that you have someone with extensive project management experience that can have timetables, they have metrics, they have measurable goals and accomplishments that I don't think necessarily would come from just owning a business. I would also recommend that the actual maintenance and staff that have been dealing with these buildings for their whole career be given more sort of a voice in this process as well. They're intimately involved in the everyday dealing with these buildings, the maintenance. There is an infrastructure there to prepare these buildings, and maybe they should be given more of a voice and more expansion to spend these monies directly rather than subbing these out to God and everybody for profit motives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Moore, I'm going to ask, and we've got Mr. Parker's number here. Maybe you could talk to him, give him a call tomorrow and talk through a couple of these things. And I'd be also happy to call from my end of it. So we'll make sure we get back, and I like the idea. And I think, I shouldn't be responding back, so let me not mess up my own procedure here. But let me ask Mr. Moore to make the contact, and I'll make a contact, and we'll make sure we get some answers. Okay, thank you. Okay, I see no other member of the public. I know that. I'm doing the public first, Ms. Certain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's okay.
I actually have some concern about the makeup of the board myself. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. Excuse me. The concern that I have is that I don't think there's enough diversity from the community at large. I think the 1 mil Oversight Committee has done whatever it has done, and I'm not being critical of that. I think just appointing members, I would prefer to see application process, much like was done with the Children's Trust. We give members of the public a chance to apply if this is something that they like to do. Because what I see happening here now is that we have a very closed group. Yes, I would get to appoint a person, as all of you all would, but we have these other groups that are listed here. And so if you're affiliated with one of these groups, you get the pleasure of being on this board. But there are more people, and there's a bigger sphere of people that have something to offer and can bring ideas and can bring oversight and may want to engage with this process. And we're in essence boxing them out. So if you're not a part of the school ecosystem is how I see it, because a lot of the 1 mil oversight is they're either retired teachers or they're in some way affiliated with the district, and at least the last time I looked at it about 18 months ago. So I think to include more of the public and to have a more diverse set of people and more community engagement, I think we would serve ourselves and our community and bring more transparency to the process if we have an application period, much like they did for the Children's Trust. It wasn't a long application period. I think it was about 2 weeks that it was open, and they got close to 80 applicants for 5 spots, I think it was, because 5 are prescribed in the Constitution. But they got 80 applicants from the public that applied, a very good cross-section of people. I think if we limit it to this, we only have people from the greater Gainesville area. We exclude people from the outlying municipalities because they may not have someone who would appoint them to such a board. So that's something that the makeup of the Oversight Committee concerns me, and I've expressed concerns as I had with the DAC in the past, and I've expressed concerns that I had with the Oversight Committee. I think to be transparent and to be more engaging of our community, I think we would serve them well if we have an application process where all of the members aren't just appointed. There are some people that can apply and become part of this process, and right now I just see the process as being too closed.
Thank you, Ms. Surton. Ms. Roy?
Thank you. I agree that, you know, we could perhaps include more people through an application process, perhaps even people from the university. But I think, you know, and I'm not opposed to the idea at all, but I think that the people that have been included, you know, are the people that were involved in the process to get the sales tax, you know. They're the chamber funded a great percentage of the money needed to pass the sales tax. We're very grateful. The PTA was greatly involved in the process of passing it. The public schools had teachers out there, you know, lobbying for all of the, you know, elements of the referendum. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the thinking was, let's involve the people that were involved in getting the tax passed in the first place. But I agree that perhaps we could include more people if we put out an application process.
Dr.
Just
McNeil,
my-
thank you, Ms. Roy.
I think that both of you are right on target. The fact of the matter that we had certain organizations who were heavily involved, but I just heard this citizen say how many doors that their group had to knock on, indivisible. Is that, well, I think that's what he said. However, in order to accommodate all of the necessary people that need to be on this group, I'm wondering, are we going to be able to expand it, or we are caught where we must have the 5 that we will suggest, and then 1 member that the superintendent will suggest, and then all of the other groups? Is it any way to amend this already where it can be expanded?
Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chair, yes, this is your oversight committee. This was just kind of a starting point with some of the obvious choices. If you want it to be larger, you can add groups. I don't think I felt competent to pick all the groups that you might want to put on there, other than these kind of that had kind of helped formulate it and built what the ideas were. Certainly more can be added. You don't have to pick ones individually. Superintendent doesn't have to pick one. These 4 groups don't have to pick them. It's really up to you. This is just kind of a blueprint that looks a lot like the One Mill Oversight Committee, with the idea, and just in addressing the application process, who would you want reviewing that, for how long, and, you know, so are there delays? My understanding with the Children's Trust, I think the governor is selecting the people that are on that committee. Certainly, I don't think you want the governor picking our oversight committee members. So it would have to be a decision made whether you all are going to review applications and pick as a body, or whether you want applications coming to you individually to at least help you pick your own. If you wanted to just kind of increase that opportunity for voices, you could give yourselves 2 picks each. I mean, there's lots of different ways we can do this. This is just a starting point.
Dr. Paulson?
Well, if you want to, what I was thinking is, you can have, you know, I don't think that you want the committee too big, but you can have 2 at large. I think you want to set some criteria, like the gentleman said. I think our staff, our facility staff, would be good to give.
Excuse me.
excuse me, that's right, is that we should have our facility staff could draw up the qualifications we'd like to see in this. And I also see where, that we have, people can be continuous, but we could have a rotating group for these two. And I think that would give an opportunity to other people in the community. We could get people that are pretty versed in the work that needs to be done, and that would satisfy that. I still think you don't want to make it too big, because then even with the DAC, you have trouble getting people there every time. So anyway, that would be my suggestion. I was thinking, before we ever come in, before I saw this, I thought an at-large would be a good way to go. Just suggesting, a suggestion, 2 at large. I think our facility, I think the gentleman mentioned the work of our facility, know what's going on. Maybe I misunderstood him, but I thought that's what he said. And I think they would know what kind of people they would like to see on this oversight committee, and it still keeps it at a workable and manageable level. I think our oversight committee for the 1 mill is 8 people, right? So 8. Yeah. So that was interesting too. So that's my suggestion. It's just a suggestion, just trying to take into what you guys were saying and keep it within a workable amount, and at the same time take in the suggestions of the people in the community and on our board. Thank you.
I did want to mention my only concern with that, I think we have miracle workers on our facility staff. They're great. They've been doing, we have better facilities than we deserve based on the money. And now that we have money, thanks to the people of Alachua County, to take care of our children, and we're hopefully moving forward. I think the idea, though, is it's an independent oversight committee, so I don't think anyone who works for the school board can be on the committee.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The school board, the gentleman from Indivisible, the suggestion was, and the way I understood it, what I'm suggesting is you're going to have criteria to judge the applicants. They would design the criteria and put forth
Okay.
how we can pick these people. They're not going to be on the board. So I didn't suggest that.
Okay.
I'm just thinking they have the expertise. We involve their expertise to make sure that there are people that come from these other organizations or applications that would add something to the committee as far as knowledge of how what's important in building these schools or fixing these schools, et cetera, selecting them. That's all I said there.
Okay.
They got their work, I
Thank
know
you.
that.
Thank you. Dr. McNeely.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know my light was still
Okay.
on, but since it is, I'll talk.
Well, it's not a requirement.
I know it, but I'm going to say something. On this list of people that we would want, I'd like to see, and that may already be ingrained, that we would have students involved in this. I won't say middle or elementary, but definitely high school in some manner. We must include them.
Thank you, Dr. McNeely, and I just a comment is that if we all have an appointment, then some of these concerns about, is there someone who's from the rural area? Well, we could fix that. Is there diversity? We can fix that. But that doesn't mean we can't expand and do some other things. Ms. Certain.
So, okay, I'm glad to hear you say that, because just now, what I wanted to really ask for a point of clarification when Ms. Roy mentioned that the idea behind having these groups to appoint someone was that they worked to have this pass, and that gave me the heebie-jeebies, because it kind of, I was interpreting it as your effort and you gave money to this, so that implies access or influence over the process. And believe it or not, just because someone doesn't have a gazillion hours of time to devote to something, or the resources to devote to something doesn't mean that they don't support it and they are deemed or should not have as much influence on the process as the next person. They should have an equal opportunity, or at least have the opportunity to participate on some type of committee. Because what I found is it's like there's a small group of people in this county that's controlling everything. They're on most of the boards. They're being appointed to most of the things. They're making application because they have time and they have resources. So we don't want to exclude people because they don't have, they're not a stay-at-home mom, or they don't have the resources, they're not well connected to a community. We want to engage everybody in the community because there were a lot of people who don't have the means that they voted for this. If you look at the precinct breakout, a lot of the precincts out in the East Gainesville, lower income neighborhoods, they supported this tax. So they should have some representation. So I would try to support, nominate someone to be on the committee from one of those underrepresented communities, but we wouldn't want them to suggest, say, to be excluded, but to say, oh, you didn't work on this, so you don't have a seat at the table. I think we could come up with some general criteria. You have to be a citizen of the county, a county resident, of course, and you just have people have a general application. We can look at the Children's Trust application. It's out there. I actually probably still have a copy of it downloaded on my computer because I looked at it. It's a general application where people list the things that they've been involved in or their interests and their address for the past X number of years. And I don't think it's a very hard, complex scenario for us to do. You can have a 2-week period, we can review it, and we could, I don't have to make the selection, but I just think we need to engage the community and give folks a chance to participate in the process. Folks that are not normally at the table. I think they should, ACCEPTA always has a number. ACEA always has a number. The chamber, they can always appoint people to things. Let's try to get other people that are outside of that ecosystem, is what I say. And that's not a slight against those people. I'm happy that we have these groups that can volunteer an enormous amount of time to get something done. I was part of groups that knocked on doors and we pushed the tax. So, but let's not forget those folks who are not typical volunteers, a part of these organizations that seem to get recognized and they get plaques and things like that. Let's not forget them, exclude them from the process. That's what I want to.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Certain. Ms. Roy.
Thank you. I didn't mean to suggest that only people with money should be able to do it, because the teachers certainly aren't a privileged group, I just thought that the logical groups to look at are the ones who had interest in and had worked for but as I said, I'm not against an application process and, expanding it. What I was going to say is, it is a 12-year commitment, a 12-year, that is a long time, so.
That's not, it's not, it's a 2-year commitment.
It's a 2-year, I didn't even see that. Okay, that's what I was going to suggest, that let's make it a shorter, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that on the backup. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
And I see 2 more board members would like to comment, but I'd like to go to Mr. Moore first. And if you, could you give us, because I think we're somehow assigning more powers and to this committee than it really exists. Could you go over exactly what the purpose of this committee is as explained by ballot language?
Right. So the primary purpose of the committee is to make sure that the money we spend, and I'm trying to think of the projects that were done tonight that are designated as half-cent sales tax projects, Metcalf, Idlewild, Bishop, and the new school, that when the board approves those expenditures, it will be reviewed by this committee to make sure that it is an appropriate expenditure under the ballot language. So the ballot language included, I don't have it memorized now, but remodeling, revitalizing existing structures, new construction, technology, safety and security, and a few other things. So anything that you designate and spend from the sales tax proceeds has to match what the voters approved. So the committee's job is to make sure when they see a report from Mr. Rella if it comes across and it says textbooks, and it's attributed to the half-cent sales tax, it would be their job to say that's an inappropriate expenditure, and it needs to come from a different funding source rather than the half-cent sales tax, because that is not a capital expenditure, and it was not part of the ballot language.
Now, in going a little bit further, I would think this committee, what you just described, that's what they do. They're not approving projects. They're not saying, they're not picking the order that we're going to do projects. They're simply confirming that what we have committed to do meets the criteria you just explained.
That's correct. The school board is still constitutionally required to control, operate, and manage the school district. So those ultimate decisions go to you. This is to make sure that when you're doing that, you're doing it pursuant to the ballot language that the voters approved.
So I would go back to what Dr. Paulson said, is that I would certainly agree that we don't need a huge committee. I think if we had something around 7 or 8, I don't think it needs, the same size or close to what we have.
We already have 10.
We already have 10. So, that's already more than the 1 mil. So right now we have a motion on the floor and we're having discussion before the vote. So we'll see how that goes. But I personally think that as board members, elected board members, that we all have a responsibility here in our selection to pick people that would reflect diversity, but also are going to reflect some background in the trades or in finance that would have a sharper eye in seeing what we're doing. So I guess that's all I had. Dr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. It's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you, Mr. Moore, that we describe it. Their job is to make sure the money is spent correctly. The job of actually doing the work is our facilities people, our superintendent, and those people. That's the job we give them. Now, it does say, finally, it is preferred that each member have, it is in the backup material, finally, it is preferred that each member have experience in financial management, construction, or another relevant field to give some flexibility if you want to choose somebody else. And I agree with you, Mr. Hyatt, and then as board members, we should have take into consideration what we've heard, and we make our selection for the committee. Again, it's 10 people, correct, Mrs. Clark? 10 right now. I just thought another 2 would try to satisfy the concerns that I heard here. I do think, Mr. Hyatt, as Mr. Hyatt reiterated, you don't want too large of a committee. It's not needed. I would maybe like to make an amendment when we get a chance to have 2 at large and the criteria selected by the people in our facilities department. And if I can't get a second, then of course we won't worry about it. If I get a second, we can discuss it and vote on it. Thank you.
Ms. Surton.
Given all that's been said, I respect everyone's opinion. And I know that this is not a committee that's making decisions. I understood that very well. I only made the point, and I will reiterate. It seems that we act like everything here is set in stone. The groups that are here don't necessarily have to stay. If you want to take 2 of these groups out and you put 2 at-large members, you still stay at 10. So it's almost as if these groups that are here, like this is written, as if it's already etched in stone. If we don't want the list to be that big, the group to be that big, we don't have to have the chamber appoint a member. We can decide on who's going to appoint the members, or we can pick the members, if I understood you correctly, Mr. Moore. So I'm not trying to slight anyone. I'm just wanting to bring other people to the table and let other people be able to participate in the process. And I don't think we should act like that's a grievous thing. I'm hearing that sounding like that's a grievous thing. So I would like to amend the motion, amend this document so at that appropriate time so that we could add additional members to that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Certain. I'll definitely call on you first for that.
I thought I asked.
Yes.
And Dr. McNeely.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Well, I hear the body is saying we'd like to keep it to a minimal number, and I can understand that. But when I think about the DAC and other committees that we have, so many times I've come to them, and a lot of people are not even present. And so therefore, when you make a small committee, and that's a pretty large one, because we usually have a representative from every group, from every school almost, or clusters of schools. And when I came to the last DAC meeting, there were so many empty chairs. So I'm thinking that you need to have in place not only the diverse piece, but you need to think in terms of people do get tired. I'm glad it's only 2 years, because 12 would have been much too long. So with 2 years, maybe everyone will continue to come and be excited about the work that they have to do. It's not really stipulating how many times, but I think it said after one miss, you can't, you're probably excluded from then on. So you better really have a very good reason why you've missed the first time, and maybe getting ready, job, schedule, whatever, might have you out a second time, and then you're out. So I think it needs to be massaged, because you never know when there's a critical something. I don't know who would determine who's out or not. Maybe I don't know who's going to handle all of that. But please be careful because none of us will be around probably after the meeting on this board, not alive. But I'm thinking that we need to be cautious every step of the way, because we will go back to the public at some time. It may not be for capital outlay, but it may be for something else that we want. So we've got to embrace what we're saying here. And, I would love to have more than one selection, to be honest. I would love to be able to do that. And then I know that we probably have a diverse group. Just saying, just putting it out there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Dr. McNeely. Mr. Moore.
So I think Dr. McNeely just hit on several kind of key points as to why it was drawn up as this kind of bare bones method. And that is by having each board member appoint a member and having certain designated groups responsible for appointing their members, there are individuals responsible for making sure that somebody is showing up at those meetings. That if we do an application process, and in anticipation of that topic, I did create a very simple application, if you want to look at it, that could delay a meeting. If 3 people have failed to show up to 2, what is their commitment? They applied, they seemed interested, but then when they found out it wasn't quite what they wanted, they didn't show up to the next meeting, and now we might only have 7 current members, 2 can't make it, we don't have a quorum because we're waiting for new applications. Is there a new application process when somebody drops? All those things would have to be spelled out, which again, that's at your pleasure. It's just a lot more complicated than saying, these are the people responsible for appointing somebody to serve the 2-year term, and then if somebody cannot, so if one of your picks can't make it, they should contact you and you can immediately try to find somebody new. If the chamber's pick or the ACCPTA's pick can no longer do it, they know and they can start their process of finding somebody new, as opposed to if it's all public picks with an application process, And again, I go back to who is making, is there anyone vetting them? Is staff looking at determining qualifications, ranking, or does it all go to the board? And then are you voting on individual member, like all that has to be spelled out. That just takes time. Again, it's just time, it's fine, but it does have to be included if you're going to do an application and board voting process. But again, and even if you wanted to just do applications so that you could vet them individually, we can do that. If you want me to pass these around, I have, it basically has names and why you think you should be on the committee. I do know of one person that was on the school planning advisory committee that has already expressed interest. I told him I would send his name to all of you once the process was chosen. So yes, there is a way to maybe reach people that you might not otherwise know. But again, that's all up to you all.
Okay. Dr. Paulson.
Again, if we read this, there's nobody, I don't think he brought this with the idea this was cast in stone. The oversight committee shall be made up of no less than 10 members. So that's what the idea that this, for discussion, that we can add. So it wasn't cast in stone to begin with. And just see what we can do when we do make an amendment. If we make an amendment.
Okay, I'd like to, Ms. Certified, if I could, let me ask you, after Dr. McNeely's comments, would you feel comfortable with your concerns, which you've, I think, made very clear? Would you be comfortable with board members appointing 2 each? Do you think we could accomplish what you're wanting to do with that change?
I would like to have an application come in, because I wouldn't want to limit it just to the sphere of people that I know. I'd like to have access to more people from the public. I know a good number of people.
Okay.
I think I know, but I would like to see the interest of people to do that. But I don't have a problem with us pointing to. I just would like to have means of accessing more people.
Can I,
Dr. Paulson.
can I make the amendment?
Sure, certainly.
Why don't we just, instead of going in circles, I think. The amendment is that to expand the committee from 10 to 12 members, 2 at large, we'll go through an application process designed by the facilities department of our school board, and picked by those people where they think would help them the most. Is that all right? Do I need to write this down?
Did he, Ms. Ramos, did you get that okay?
You
Okay.
I think I did.
Do we have a second?
Second.
This amendment by Dr. Paulson, seconded by Ms. Roy.
That's okay.
How will we select the 2 at-large members?
The facilities department. You want people that are going to be, would be helpful and brings the expertise we need. That's what I heard from the gentleman that spoke.
Mr. Delaney.
I just wanted to get clarification. What I was understanding Dr. Paulson was suggesting, and I want to make sure everybody's on the same page if we're going to vote on something, is that the facilities department would receive applications, they would vet them, and then make a recommendation to the board for
Correct.
2 additional spots for the board to vote on for at-large members.
And then, can I speak to my own motion?
Certainly.
Then if you don't, if you have concerns about diversity, et cetera, that can be brought up when that recommendation's brought to the board. I think that, thank you, Mr. Delaney, for saying that, because I think that would help us in that. At the same time, I thought that was a very important thing that the gentleman said about having the expertise.
So we've already had public input.
But he can talk to the amendments.
We can talk, you can talk later, but not, we
You
can
can talk
talk,
to the amendment.
you can talk to the amendment. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Paulson. Please come on back, Mr. Parker.
I did not realize that my words would have such impact tonight. I do want to say that, to be honest, I was not aware of the scope of this committee, that it's basically auditors, is what it sounds like, that they're just looking at receipts and looking at the law. That seems fairly straightforward to me. So I was thinking that this, the oversight board was basically almost to oversee the funds, and so I believe I was mistaken.
Thank you very much.
In terms of anything else, you guys sound like you have it under control there, and so I was trying to speak to more of the expending of the funds, but I was clearly mistaken about the scope of this action item here.
Dr. Nunes, specifically toward this amendment.
Of course. There's 12 cities in Alachua County, and there's a lot of students. I agree that the students are a big part of this, and that the parents, will be backing them up. So with all the people putting their money into it, I think that we definitely need to hear from the students, because the end result of education needs to be economic prosperity. And I'd like to hear what they have to say. And then, of course, the Chamber of Commerce will always be involved, but they don't, so.
Dr. Nunes,
I
this
think they're
is
separate.
specifically on this amendment.
Yes, we have 12 cities and probably 13 in Alachua County, and I think that we need to have possibly somebody from each one.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Delaney.
Just really briefly, by way of reminder, so the public would be aware, the meetings of the Oversight Committee would be in the public, in the sunshine. So any member of the public who wanted to come to those meetings, be aware personally of how the funds were being spent. That would all be noticed and available for them to attend.
Thank you. Dr. Paulson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Roy.
I just wanted to say in favor of the motion on the floor that it seems like, to me, like a good compromise in answering some of Ms. Surton's concerns. And also, and of course, the board members can appoint whomever they think would be best qualified, and consider diversity and all the criteria that you mentioned, Ms. Surton. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. We now have have to vote on the amendment. And could you help us, Ms. Ramos, and repeat the amendment for us?
Dr. Paulson moved to expand the committee from 10 to 12 members, with 2 members serving at large, that would go through an application process designed by the Facilities Department and picked by the department that would be the most beneficial.
Well, I think when Mr. Delaney says, after they'll make a recommendation to the board, and then we vote on it.
Okay.
Instead of them picking it, they make a recommendation.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion, the amendment passes 4-1. Board members Surton, Paulson, Roy, and the chair voted aye. Board member McNeely voted no. Now, we have to vote on the actual motion as amended. All in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1. Board members Surton, Paulson, Roy, and the chair voted aye. Dr. McNeely voted no. Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. What I will do is I will bring you the new language at the next board meeting to ratify it. It's officially adopted now, but just to make sure you're happy with the sentence Adding the 2 members in the exact language, we'll bring you something on the 15th to make sure the exact verbiage is how you wanted it. But the motion is through. I just want to make sure
Okay.
that we get the
Thank you very
language
much.
corrected.
Superintendent Clark.
Yes, Chairman Hunt, I just want to clarify, with the board member selections, as board members, would you want to move forward with an application similar to the one that Mr. Moore passed out for your individual appointees, where that you could solicit those names and then select from those names? That was talked about, but it wasn't actually in this motion. So I don't know if you want staff to work on an
Well,
application
I
or
would
not.
think I would think that board members could access this as they, individually they wanted.
Sure.
Since that's not part of the motion.
Sure.
But certainly that would be available to any board member that would like to do it.
Okay.
And I would like to thank my colleagues. I thought this was a very constructive discussion. I thank everybody for their input, and I certainly thank Mr. Parker for his input as well. Okay. Moving on to citizen input, and I have no other forms here, and I don't see anyone else lined up to talk. So I do see Dr. Noon. So Dr. Noon, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. I would like to make one suggestion with the refurbishing or the rebuilding of schools, that they be solar schools, because then you'll have money coming in to pay, every month you'll have money coming in. It will virtually pay for itself, and people will learn skills and will start developing their education. Okay?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, I see no other comments. So now it's time for board member superintendent requests. And Dr. Paulson.
I request that everybody have a very, politically correct, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and any other holiday. That's my request.
Thank you. Anyone else? And just sort of echoing what Dr. Paulson said, thank you to all of our wonderful employees for Alachua County Public Schools. I hope they have a much-needed vacation for a few days and ready to hit the ground running. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all, and this meeting is adjourned.